Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we've got a top 32 breakdown for the Top Cut Events Online Treasure Cup that happened this past weekend. They had 1,000 players and 10 rounds of Swiss into this top 32 that we see here today. And a couple things before we get started. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. We make a lot of One Piece content here, and we're going to be continuing as we go into the OP10 meta in the next couple weeks. We also do have a lot of data on my website, Eggman Events, which you see here there. Also, we did have a couple other treasure cups that happened around the world this weekend. We had one in Oceania, so the TAC online, which we have all of the deck lists for this one. There's also one in Europe for the raid and trade, which I don't have all of the deck lists as of recording this one, but I do have some of them on the website, so you can check out the deck list table for some of those, including the first place list, which is Sergio's version of Bonney, so you don't want to miss that either. And we've just got a lot of deck lists from this meta for the English meta, but not only the English meta, but I have been updating the website for the OP10 EBO2 meta in Japan. You can find that on the OP10 section as well. We have over 100 deck lists of events and just 100 deck lists plus of events that happened in Japan, and so you guys can check out those deck lists too. If I think it's a good resource for you guys jumping into that new format as well. But finishing this format though, in this top 32, we did have 13 copies of Doflamingo, 5 copies of Star Deck 13 Luffy, 4 copies of Purple Luffy, 3 copies of Shanks, 2 copies of Star Deck 10 Luffy, 2 Luccis, a Bonney and Enel, as well as a Teach. So standard leaders, no leaders I think that are new to the topping in the OP09 meta. I'd say Dofi's been pretty consistently. I would say a third is about where it's really stood for most of this format. Sometimes it's peaked to a little bit over 50%. Sometimes it's been down to like 30, 25%. But this is generally how I find a lot of what this format looks like. Is just a lot of Dofi in a lot of ways. So not too surprising for this one. I will say that, Purple Luffy has been pretty standard at the spot. Shanks has been kind of doing well depending on the week. Star Deck 13 Luffy's been pretty standard. Star Deck 10 Luffy has been very on the rise, I think. So being able to get a lot of tops in the last couple weeks combined. Lucci, I think, has been a little bit less popular as lately, which I think is interesting. Bonney, despite not popping last couple weeks, did top in this one, as well as also get first place in Europe, as mentioned, and now gets the placing here and there. And then I still think Teach is in a good spot, and more people are on it than where we were kind of in like a couple weeks ago, but it definitely will increase as we get to OP10. It gets a little bit more of the tools it needs to. So that's kind of my thoughts for this. We also do have the leader breakdown as well, if you guys want to check that out. But still a good diverse amount of leaders. The only ones that really, didn't top, depending on people running it, was like Smoker. I noticed like it was like the one that it was like the 10th most popular leader in this one, but didn't top. But generally speaking, all the leaders that were, in the top 80% of usage were topping this event, which I thought was interesting. So other than that, you guys can find all the deck list here. You can find the ones that correspond to the leaders that you want. We're going to go over the top placing one for each one of these leaders, though, starting off with our first place, which is Picantejose's version of the Monkey.D.Luffy. And I know Jose personally. We are now locals now that I live in California, and I know that he's been working on this BY Luffy for a long time. So not only seeing him top with it, but get first place with it, I think is a real accomplishment. So personally, congratulations to Jose for their finish with this leader here. And this is definitely, one of the stronger decks in this format. It's been relevant since the release of Luffy from OP07, and unless Bandai intervenes at all, I don't think the deck is necessarily going anywhere. It has kind of gone like incrementally worse, I think, since OP08. Teach has been a really tough matchup for the deck, and then also, which is going to be more popular in OP10. Dofi can sometimes be a tough matchup if they're able to be very aggressive against you, and also like sometimes just a well-timed pudding can just change how this deck works in the first place. But I have been seeing like a couple builds differ, and you'll see that all the builds that did top for this do have different lists, very minor changes in ratios and card pool. But I do like the 3 blockers in the Nami, the Emporio, and the Shirahoshi. All of them are really good, can be played off Moria and have like their different applications. And then we do have kind of like the 3 of the brothers bond, the Kingdom Come, and then the one of Monkey.D.Luffy. This is Zombie Luffy. I've been seeing this pop up every once in a while at like 1 copy. It is a 5-cost Luffy, so it works for the loops. You can play it off the 2 cost as well. It is like a little bit slow to set up, but if you're playing against a deck where you could like play this Luffy off of Moria with like a Sabo for protection, and you get that protection, it's really good for being able to get some removal aggressively and recycling some stuff into your trash from your trash, since you're going to have a mildly big trash late game with all the Sabos that you're hopefully doing. So not much more to say, but congratulations to Jose for their finish there. Next up, we've got fwazalaza with their version of Doflamingo, and I don't have a lot to say about this one, unfortunately. I will say the biggest thing from this build compared to others, though, is that they are playing this crocodile from Stardeck 17. Stardeck 17 had a lot of good cards for Doflamingo, and this is like the worst one in comparison, since we don't see a lot of plays, even though it reads like one of the best ones. So on play, reveal one card from the top of your deck. If that card is a 7 Warlords, draw 2 cards and place 1 card from your hand to the top of your deck. So what you can do is that, like, if you know the top of your deck, this can be like a technical +1, since you do get the draw, and then you can set up like another play kind of thing. I do think that you normally get enough draws and from the Weevil itself, so that's generally why people aren't playing this card. But it's a 1k, it's a 4-drop 5k, and I don't think it's a bad card to play, but it's definitely one that I think was starting the format where people are like, oh, this is broken, it's a draw 1, and you get to recycle it. But from this one, it looks like card advantage was really what their goal was, right? We are playing 4 copies of Moria, 4 copies of Crocodile, and 4 copies of Weevil. We're only playing 1 copy of Sengoku, which I thought was also very strange. If we're drawing as much as we are, we don't have as much need for Sengoku, but I generally want to play at least like 2 copies, right? To be able to find more of our warlords. It's really good to bounce back to our hand for stuff with like our Trafalgar Law, and also, but we're also not playing Jozu, so there's less cards to bounce back with Sengoku, so that kind of makes sense. So honestly, one of the more different builds from Doflamingo that I've seen the last couple weeks, even though it's just really adding 1 card that people don't use that much, but that's enough variety for me to notice something different like this. So this is the build there. Congratulations for their 2nd place with Dofi. The next up, we've got Shanks, and this is Andyroo's version of the build, and it is the animal version of the deck, which I failed to go over last week, so I'm happy it topped again this week to go over it. But originally I saw it top with Quan here in North America, and I did do a little bit of testing. It was on Wednesday Night One Piece this past week too, and in general, I really do dig this build. I think this is something that kind of fixes the issues that we had with Shanks, notably the issue of saying, you know what, we have this really good late game. The fact that we have like the 8-drop Silver's Rayleigh, Dragon can be really obnoxious on curve, especially if they can't answer it. Newgate, as well as our 10-drop Shanks too. And so the biggest issue with this is that like we don't really have a lot going on in the early mid game, especially like if we want some removal or ways to interact with our opponent. We don't have a lot of ways to do so. So about able to using like the 3-drop chopper as like a way to say, you know what, my opponent has to interact with this card. If they don't, I just get the potential of getting a free body every turn. The fact that this is like an early attacker if we need to, I think it's a really good incrementation for Shanks, and it makes a lot of sense in my mind. So we're playing choppers, we're playing the super spot build Duck Squad as well, being able to use this to get like another 2k back to our hand, and it works really well. I'm really happy with what this boat kind of looks like. So I don't have a lot more to say. I do think it's a fun add to what this meta looks like, and helps Shanks be, I think, a little bit more viable, since it was really dependent. It was like the 50-50 deck, so I think this is a really fun build, and congratulations to Andyroo for their finish with Shanks. And then next up, we've got the purple Luffy. So this is Hippynite's version of the deck, and there are a couple like new adds to the deck that I've popped up. Mostly it's this 5-drop Tony Chopper. So any return, you may return 1 or more Dawn cards from your field to your Dawn deck. So if this character is active, then this character gains blocker until the end of your opponent's turn. So this is supposed to work with like the black and purple Luffy, where you're able to like lose 2 Dawn, and at the end of your turn you get 1 back active, so you can use it for something like Gum Giant, which is obviously a very good card in this deck. But the fact that you can use this with also like you can play this off your Luffy Taro, so if you need to be able to have a blocker afterwards, you do have to like lose 2 Dawn, 1 for playing the Luffy Taro and 1 for the Tony Chopper, but it's still worth it. So also has some like really good like end game end of turn things with Captain Kid, so you can use something where you play Kid on 10 and also the Chopper, you lose the Dawn, but then you get it back active. So with the kit effect, which means that not only do you have 2 blockers, but then you still have 1 open for giant. You can do the same thing with queen as well, but obviously this card's a little bit less flexible and searchable since it isn't a straw hat. So I think that's something that's worth mentioning too. So generally speaking, though, this deck is very strong. I think in this meta still, it has like a really good tempo game. If you're able to disrupt it, or if they're not able to see it, it does kind of falter from there. But I do think it's really relevant right now. And congratulations to Hippynite for their finish there. And then talking about purple Luffys, we got Koty with their back-to-back X1 finishes with red purple Luffy from last week and from this week too. So I did actually play in this event for 3 rounds. I ended up going 1-2 drop, but I did play red purple Luffy as well, and I'm really happy with these builds that do not run the Zoro specifically. So I did talk to Koty also afterwards and picked his brain on some thoughts on the deck and matchups and how to run this deck. And something that he said in particular was his his usage of the card Thunderbagua. He really liked what this card could do. You generally are in range for this whenever. It's just like another ramp card that you can turn into like a defensive tool late game. The other kind of benefit for this card is that let's say we're at 10 Dawn, we can use our Luffy's effect to go from like lose a Dawn, so we go from 10 to 9, but we'll have 1 open left, and then we can use our 10 drop or our leader effect to get 1 back too. So I probably could have said it a better way, but what I'm saying is that if you play a 9 drop that loses Dawn, which is either the Monkey.D.Luffy or the Charlotte Linlin, you're able to get 1 Dawn back with our leader effect, which means you have 2 Dawn open for your Thunderbagua, which is really handy. That's really handy to do. And obviously most people use it for like double Gum Giant, but I think with the Thunderbagua that just makes sense as well. So that's really helpful. There's also some weird times where you could like play Luffy early, and then you can leave 2 Dawn open, and then you can Thunderbagua and get 1 back if you think your opponent's not going to be able to answer it, which is also very strong. But generally speaking, it's been good. He doesn't play the 10 cost Shanks, which he thinks is not needed in this build, and I want to try this one either as well. But I really do like this deck. I think it's in a good spot, and I want to try his specific build in the next couple weeks as well. So this is and congratulations to Koty for their finish with the red purple Luffy. Next up, we've got Bonney, which again has been pretty uncommon in the last couple weeks in the North American meta. But this is Nicholas's version of the build here, and I don't think like a lot has changed with how we build this deck. I will say the top end for this deck seems a little bit greedier than usual, with the fact that we have not only 4 Hodies, but 3 copies of Eustace Captain Kidd, 4 copies of Shanks, as well as 4 copies of the Doflamingo. So 16 cards at this top end. We have like half of our deck without counter, but they're all very good cards that we want to get to the end game with as well. We are playing the Carrot, which is very strong. We're not against Dofi from specifically. We're not playing 5-cost Bonney, but we have been playing a lot of Cavendish as well, since that one's been very strong. And then our support package, we are playing the Supernova and Doflamingo mix with it too. So we don't have like a lot of Doflamingo stuff, only 19, but we also don't have like a lot of Supernovas with only 20. So I think this is something that is going to go away a little bit in OP10 with the addition of Tashigi and Smoker. Those cards have been very good for Bonney and Green in general. So it means most people are just using the Supernova package instead of the Dofi and Supernova package moving forward. I'd be curious to see if we can get it more popular in OP10 when we get it in the English version, but honestly, I think Bonney will be getting better with that inclusion of those green cards, and it's not something that's going to go away at all. So it's been persistent since the release of OP07. It's never really been the best deck, I think, of the format, but it has gotten a lot of tops and a lot of wins as well, with players just being able to have a really good run with it. And I don't think that's going away either. So this is Nicholas's version of the deck, and congratulations for their finish there. And the next up, we got Rob Lucci. So this is the build from Brian here. And Brian ended up going, I believe, X2 with this build. Let me double check. I think it was X2, right? Yeah, X2 was our first X2 with a 13th place there with it. And Rob Lucci's been, again, kind of like Bonney, but a little bit stronger. It's like one of the best decks to just go in this format with it's just a good deck. I don't know what to say. Do you guys need me to tell you that Rob Lucci's been a good deck? It's been very strong. So generally speaking, a lot of people kind of know what the deck list look like at this point. There's not a lot of room for determination for that. I've been seeing like 5-drop Kaku, be a little bit more valuable lately, and more people have been adding it. 2 copies of Kaido I think is strong, and it does help you with your worst matchups where it's the BY Luffy as well as the Teach, just because this can interact with their boss monsters and remove without KOing, which is strong, especially since this is an activate main that can remove without KOing, so that's very strong for a lot of different ways. Jack, we're only playing 2 copies, which I get because we do have to have such a good top end. 2 copies of Sabo, and then we got to play 8 copies of Moria and 4 copies of Rebecca, which shouldn't surprise anyone. So I don't have much more to say. We'll see what Rob Lucci does the next couple weeks, and if it is able to survive any potential restrictions that happen in March as well. But it's definitely, I think, something that might get hit, and we'll see if that's the case. Even though it doesn't do as well, I think, in the OP10 format, mostly because Teach is just kind of getting more popular because of that. So that's something that I think depends on it. So, but this is the build. Congratulations to Brian for their finish with Lucci. The next up, we got Chent with their version of Enel. And Enel has been like all these most of these leaders, right? Most of these leaders are older leaders that are just continuing to do well, despite them being 3 or 4 sets previous to the current meta. And Enel is definitely, pun intended, hard to kill, right? It's just going to be around, I think, forever. I think it's one of the best generic yellow decks because of its activate, its once per turn effect, being able to just heal so much and just be good at giving you a lot of potential to hit like really good trigger effects as well. So one thing I will note is that the deck is getting better in EBO2. There was another wave of support for it. It also has a way to interact with stages, which means it's really good against Teach, and also green and purple Luffy, which are very strong in Japan right now too. But the biggest issue right now compared to where we are in EBO2 is that we don't have a way to really heal when we don't have our on plays in orbit for us, so we can't use those cards. So with a new Enel coming out of EBO2 does help this deck a lot, but otherwise we're just doing the same thing, right? We've got our Katakuri and our Yamato and Ace as our top end. I have been seeing people play Lucci every once in a while, so when attacking once per turn, you may add 1 card for the top or bottom of your life cards to your hand. You may rest one of your opponent's character at the cost of 4 or less. Then if you have 1 or more life cards, you get to add 1 to the top of your deck. So you get to draw 1, essentially. You get to interact with 4 costs, which means specifically like Dofi is really affected by this card. And it's a 6-drop 7K, so it's a little bit tough for them to remove outside of like Jozu or spending their whole turn on a Gravity Blade. So I think that's helpful for the deck. It's been popping up for every once in a while. I do also like the Kuzon, so place 1 card for your opponent's place 1 of your opponent's character to the cost of 3 or less at the top or bottom of their life. Then your opponent trashes 1 card from their hand. So this kind of interaction helps a lot too, and can make some like weird value trades for you, and helps you get a big enough number so Gadotsu can actually hit things in like the early game, which is nice. So I don't have much more to say though. I think Enel is going to be still popular in OP10. We'll see it over there as well. And then to wrap it up, we do have Peter's version of the Marshall.D.Teach. And this deck has just been, not consistent, I think, in the toppings of this meta, right? I did see a bit of a resurgence in this month in particular on the online treasure cuts. More and more people are using it, but it's still like missing a little bit of something, right? And it also does hurt when Doflamingo is probably its worst matchup, and it's the most popular matchup in the game right now because of that. So Teach does have a bit of a tough time, but this is a bit of a spicier build than I've seen across different builds either. One thing is we are playing the Tempest Kick Sky Slicer, so you get to KO up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 0, or up to 1 of your opponent's stages with a cost of 3 or less. So it also has the trigger to draw 2, which I think is really, really handy in its own way. So that's helpful. You can also like being able to KO a stage in a mirror match can be something that helps you too. So we have like enough cards that give like reductions to, which with the Von Augur or something like that. And so, when we care about like getting actual cards, it does help to have like additional ways to trigger them. We are playing like the Shockwave, which I think has been slowly adding as like a staple to the deck right now. And then we also have the I bid 500 millions. Now the wording for this card is a little bit much, but specifically what it says is that you get to choose 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 1 or less, and then you either get to KO it, return it to their hand, or place it face up at the top or bottom of their life. So this card's pretty flexible. Also, if you have a Celestial Dragons type character, you get to draw 1. We don't run any of those, so we don't get that draw 1 with it inherently, but it means that you have like this way to interact with a lot of your opponent's cards, but also I think importantly, it has this trigger to KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less, or return it to its owner's hand. So the fact that this interacts with 6 costs, I think, is very strong. If you hit this off of life, you get a lot of benefits for it, and I think that's kind of basically what Peter was trying to do with this build, is that we have all these cards that have really good trigger effects to KO 4 costs, to be able to, activate the main here, draw 2 cards, which is very good, or, be able to just remove a 6 cost or less in their own way. So we do have ways to, again, use Von Augur to make it so you KO a 4 cost, which is enough for, getting rid of cards in like Doflamingo, which again is our toughest matchup, and then just generally like interact with cards like that, which I think is strong. So I think that that's a really cool tech for this. I think it probably caught a lot of people off guard, and I'm sure Peter had to be like, or people ask Peter like, okay, so what does that card do? I've never seen that card in my life, which I think is cool to see in a deck that ended up getting like a top 32 finish as well. So this is Peter's version of the build, and congratulations for their finish with Teach. But that's going to be it for this one. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. You can find all this data on my website, Eggman Events, and much other of the One Piece card game as well. And this is probably going to be my last or second to last kind of breakdown for the OP09 meta. It's been super fun, and I do appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to OP10 as well. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.